Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining this 30-minute live training session for setting up the Aquilex system. My name is Alan Blair, and I am the Hologic Clinical Application Specialist Team Manager. My colleague Stacey Tatum, who you can hopefully see on your screen, and myself will be delivering today's training session. I'm based in Glasgow, and Stacey is based in Colchester. Stacey is one of 5 Hologic Clinical Application Specialists within the UK, whose primary role is to educate and train our customers on the use of our equipment. During these challenging times, we are trying to help our customers by offering these web-based sessions to minimise the footfall within your hospital. We're working from home, so I hope you appreciate the quality of the video feed is not always perfect, but hopefully it will be good enough. The agenda for this 30-minute session is we're just going to have a look at the Aquilex system and how it works. We'll then show you the consumables required to set up the system. We'll then watch Stacey actually setting up the Aquilex system, and then we'll go over some of the most common fault-finding hints and tips. Training certificates will be provided to all attendees. If a group has viewed today's session on one device, so say you may be watching on a laptop but sharing it with 3 or 4 of your colleagues, etc., then please email us with all your attendees' names so we can prepare a certificate for them. And I'll show you the email address on the next slide as to where you can send these names. If you have any questions or would like support from the Hologic team, please email us at the following email address, and that is ukginsurgical@hologic.com. We are always around, we are working, so if you do need that additional support, please always reach out and we'll be happy to help you. Just one point, if you are joining and you are using your laptop, you'll receive a short questionnaire at the end of the session. If you're watching on your phone or your iPad, etc., you won't get that questionnaire. We would really appreciate your feedback on these sessions so we can help develop our online training offering. So any comments or anything you want to say to us, we'll gladly receive them and hopefully make some improvements as we move on. Over to you, Stacey.
Thanks, Alan. So I'm going to get straight on with the training because we've got a lot to get through and not much time. So when you are asked to do a MyoSure, you will need to get the MyoSure system out. Before you do anything else with it, before your patient's anaesthetised, it's probably best to just turn it on to make sure it's working. You have the MyoSure controller, which is a simple on-off switch here. Some lights will come on, some numbers. They should all be 0. If they're not, there's a little grey key here. We just 0 those out. And the Aquilex, it will do a little systems check. It will tell you what it's doing in this window here. So it will say system check, system OK, and then it will ask you to insert your tubing. So the Aquilex machine, what it is going to do for you is pumping fluid at a pressure that we set. That's going to enable the surgeon to see. And it also can control any bleeding if that tends to happen. And we can do that by increasing the pressure. But whilst it's doing that, it's also calculating what's going in and what's coming back. So it can give you an accurate fluid deficit. So Alan is going to show you a slide and explain in a bit more detail how we would program this interface.
Thank you, Stacey. Okay, so hopefully you can all see the image of the Aquilex system with the MyoSure controller below it. I'm just going to try and get a pointer for you so I can explain some bits and pieces. So with the Aquilex pump system itself, one of the key things to be aware of is we have this window here. And this window is really useful throughout the procedure and even when setting up, because it will give you information here as to what the machine needs, or if there is some alarm going off or a ping to alert you, then have a look on the window here and just identify what it's saying, because this will help you throughout the procedure. A couple of other areas to be aware of. We have a grey box here, which is the pressure box. And inside that, you'll see there are 2 identical numbers at the moment on this picture. The number at the bottom, which is under the setting banner here, this is the actual number the consultant would like the intrauterine pressure to be set at. So this number can be controlled by the consultant giving the circulating team instructions. If you would like to put the pressure up, you tap on the up arrow here. If you'd like to put the pressure down, you tap on the down arrow there. The pressure will increase and decrease in increments of 5. The lowest the pressure can go to is 40 millimeters of mercury and goes right up to 150 millimeters of mercury. But normally, when you switch the machine on, it will default to 80 millimeters of mercury, and we tend to find this is a good starting position. The other number at the top says intrauterine. Now, this number here will actually change because this is the actual intrauterine pressure. So we're sending information back from the hysteroscope to the machine. So this number will go up and down, and what you'll see during the procedure is the pump wheel, which is based over here, will start to rotate. Sometimes it's slowly, just back and forward. Other times it rotates quite fast. And what really is happening is the machine is working hard to try and match this number here, which the consultant has asked to be set at. So this number will change here to try and match it eventually, and they should hopefully spend a bit of time on the same number. The other area to look at here is the blue panel. Now this is where we control fluid deficit. I want to just show you first of all the fluid deficit limit box here. When you switch the machine on, this will default, this number here will default to 1000 millimeters, 1000 mils. But what you can do is you can take this up to a maximum of 2500 mils. The BSGE guidelines state that for a healthy patient, the maximum absorption for saline would be 2500 mils, but always ask the consultant at the start of the case for that particular patient what number they would like to set this at. You can use the arrow keys up if you want to put that number up or down, but as I say, the maximum is 2500. It will let you go to. You have another number here on the right hand side of the screen, and the number's in red. This is the actual fluid deficit in live time during the case. So this number will constantly change, usually rising. And what you'll find is throughout the procedure, as this number here, the deficit number, gets closer to the set number, the deficit limit, you'll start to see the green band here will then change to amber, and then eventually it'll go red and start to alarm to let you know you're getting close to that limit, and you may want to abandon the procedure at that point. We have a 0 button here. This is important for when we do the prime initially. We'll do some testing with the fluid, but we want to make sure we zero that before we actually begin the case properly with the patient, because no fluid at that point will be in the patient, so the number here will not be correct. We hold the 0 button down for a few seconds, and that will reset the counter to 0 here. The other thing to look at here is the prime button itself, and you'll see the window here will say once you've plugged everything in to press the prime button. So you'll press that prime button, it will purge the system of air with pumping the fluid in through the scope, and it will measure and calibrate some of the pressures within the scope. The other button you'll use probably most frequently is going to be the pause resume button, and that is, as it says, it's like a start and stop for the fluid being pumped in. So if you want to start it, you just tap on it and it will start the fluid going in. If you want to stop it, you tap it again and it will stop. It's as simple as that. Okay, over to you, Stacey.
Thanks, Alan. So you've got your machine out, you've switched it on, you've programmed the interface. So before the actual procedure starts, it's probably really wise to do a 2-minute checkover. If you complete this checkover, then hopefully it will save you having to troubleshoot during the procedure. So the first thing I would do is to turn your machine around. Like so. And check your suction dial here. So this should be on 2 o'clock when we start. So I'll make sure that's on at 2 o'clock. I would check that all my plugs are in securely, that my scale is attached and is tight, and then I would check my reusable tubing. These, just lift the filters up, make sure there's no fluid in there, there's no condensation, there's one on each side. If there was to be fluid or condensation in there, you would need to change them straight away. If you try to put the machine on whilst they had fluid in there, it would cut out. So it's always worth having a spare set of these on your shelves. So once I checked the back, I would bring it around and check my canisters. So I'm using Ceres at the moment on this system. I will go into VACSAC for you in a second. But each Ceres liner has a hole in it, and that is indicated by the end of this lollipop here. So there's the hole, there's the end of the lollipop. Each rigid canister also has a hole in it, and that is indicated by the larger hole on the outside of the canister. So when you are putting these together, you need to line up the holes together. So in goes the liner. I've lined up the end of the lollipop with the outside, and then I seal it down nice and tight. It's best to do that off of the scale. If you try to do that whilst it's on the scale, you could push down too hard and crack the scale.
Can you just tilt the camera a little bit, Stacey?
Sorry, tilt the camera
a little bit.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Thank
You
you.
will also have tandem tubing. The blue, the biggest end, goes into the front canister. Again, seal that down nice and tight. So once this one's filled, if it needs to have any more fluid, it will pump into the back one. So then I would go around and check each canister was all the lollipops were lined up and everything was sealed down tight. I cannot stress to you how important that is, because when you have troubleshooting during the procedure, 99% of the time, it's going to be one of those canisters. You will also have a tissue trap on one of the canisters. They do come with their lids on, but they're not always sealed tight, so just give that a test. Put that on your canister, again, nice and tight. So Alan's going to show you a slide, bird's eye view of how it will really look.
Thank you, Stacey. Okay, so just to be clear, we are showing the Ceres setup at the moment. Some of our other customers use the VACSAC setup, and they just are set up slightly differently. But the key thing here when using the Ceres system is that, as Stacey has shown you, that the liners are aligned correctly. This can be one of the #1 things as a fault finding exercise you should do, because this is probably the most common issue that comes up. Now, just to be clear, the lollipop that Stacey was talking about are these kind of round shaped items here with the lollipop stick, and you can see they're on every single liner. What we need to have is the stick of the lollipop must be aligned in direction of the hole in the rigid canister, which is here. So you've seen all those pictures, they're all aligned perfectly here. You can see them all aligned. If for any reason you may be in a hurry and you've quickly pushed the liners on and you find that suddenly this lollipop is actually over at this angle, or could be over here at any point, when you switch the machine on and everything starts working, you're going to find that nothing is being sucked back from the patient, and that is because these are in the wrong position. So always, one thing to take away is always ensure these are aligned with the hole. As Stacey has shown as well, we have a tandem system. So this is the front canister here. My F is the front. So as that starts to fill, we have the overflow, and we use these blue tipped tandem tubes here. So it's always important to make sure these are nice and flush. They shouldn't be at any angle. They need to be nice and tightly flush with the system and pushed down nice and tight. So the fluid will then flow through these into the back canister here as your overflow. Okay, and we have two separate systems. You've got this side here, this side on here is your diagnostic side. So this will always be sucking throughout the procedure, sucking fluid from the under buttock drape and also from the outflow channel of the scope through the entirety of the procedure. Once the pathology is identified, it's exactly the same system. You have your front canister and your back canister for your overflow. You've got your tandem tube running down here, but also, as Stacey has shown, we have got the tissue trap here, and it's really important just to take that off, unscrew it, then tighten it back on, and make sure that is always nice and tight. Any little loose areas can mean you'll have a reduction in suction. So technically, that's the key things to work out on this setup. Back over to you, Stacey.
Thanks, Alan. So for those that are using VACSAC, it's the same principle. You have 4 canisters, 2 at the front, 2 at the back, but your liners will be different. So with the VACSAC, you have 2 coloured liners. You have a black liner and a blue liner. The black liner always goes at the back, and that is because inside the liner is a filter, and that filter is going to stop any fluid coming back and up to the machine. When you get the canisters, they will come to you like this, and you'll need to manually pull them down before you put them into your rigid canisters, and you can line up the holes with those as well if you want to. Just make sure they're sealed down nice and tight. And like I said, you'll have black at the back and blue at the front. If you haven't got any black canisters and you decide to use the blue ones, If you put a blue one at the back, this will not stop fluid going up into your machine, and it's going to ruin your machine. So please do not use the blue ones at the back. You will also see on this blue canister that we have a VAC-SAG tissue trap. We've had feedback that sometimes it's quite difficult to get the end of the cutting device onto the tissue trap. So VAC-SAG now provide, I think you buy them in packets of 20, a little adapter that just goes into your tissue trap like that, and your device will go on top. You'll probably have something similar in your suction tubing, which you can use. So if you just save those, because I think you tend to chuck them away anyway, if you can just save them in a bag, put them with your MyoSure stuff, and that will just be easy for when you cut when you place the cutting device on there. And Alan's going to show you a little photo to show you how it should look.
Thanks, Stacey. So yeah, just to be clear, we're now at the back of the system. So you can see here, this is the back of the machine. You've got your low and high suction here. And the key thing, as Stacey said, is always black to the back with the VAC-SAG. Okay, black to the back and blue to the front. It's exactly the same system as I described before, in the sense that your blue will fill up first, and then any overflow will run through on the tandem tubing into the back here. So you can see here, it would flow up through here and then start to fill in the back canister here. And also just to show you that from the high suction side here, we have got air. This is just air being sucked by the machine. The Aquilex machine is sucking air to create that vacuum into the canister. So air is being pulled back and up and out the machine in that direction. And we have two separate ones. We've got the left and right hand side. They work independently. So as I say, these two work together, and these two here work together as well. Stacey's mentioned this little adapter which can go into the tissue trap, and you can see here in this picture, this has been used by one of our customers, and it's in position just here. And as I say, they're great little things to help make sure that your tubing from your MyoSure device can plug in nice and securely into that tissue trap, so we can get all those little samples back after the procedure. Back over to you, Stacey.
Thanks, Alan. So we've got the system set up and ready to go. Now we just need to check that our consumables. So what you'll need for your MyoSure procedure is your normal hysteroscopy set. You'll need a cutting device, a MyoSure cutting device. You won't know which size you'll need until the surgeon's gone in and had a look. So it might be worthwhile having one of each on standby. You'll need MyoSure tissue, MyoSure bungs. You'll need a 3-litre bag of normal saline, an under buttock drape with preferably with a tap on it, and some inflow and some outflow tubing, some MyoSure inflow and outflow tubing. Explain those in a second, and of course, MyoSure scope. So when you get your scope out, it will come into two parts. You'll have the main body of the scope and the outflow channel, and in a little trinket box you will have a light lead adapter and some end caps. So you want to be opening up your scope seals. There's 2 in a packet. We want to be putting those into the scope. I've got one there. They're dome shaped, and it goes dome side in. Then put an end cap on the end of the scope. And you would do the same for the outflow channel. So these scope seals are going to stop any fluid coming back out of this end of the scope, but they also give a little bit of traction as you slide the outflow channel down the scope, because this doesn't lock into place like some scopes, but it will stop it falling out for you. So once you've put your bungs in, then you would need to connect your tubing. So the inflow tubing is color coded, it's blue. And that is going to go onto your inflow tap. Most of your scopes will have a blue arrow on your inflow tap, but if that blue arrow has faded, then the arrow pointing in towards your scope is your inflow. And it's a little lure lock, so it just sits on there. And then your outflow, I've unraveled it so that you can see that it's Y-shaped. So there's the Y bit there. It has 2 yellow ends and a white end. Now the 2 yellow ends are going to stay with your patient. Again, one is going to go onto your scope, and your outflow channel will have a little yellow arrow on, so it's color coded again. If that yellow arrow has faded, then the arrow pointing away from your scope is your outflow. So 1 on your scope, and this yellow end will go on your under buttock straight. It does have a clamp on this one. We don't clamp this off. We just attach it to the tap on the under buttock straight and make sure that it's nice and tight. And then the white end will come off and be attached to the right side canister. So if you want to remember white to right, nice and tight. Now everything that comes from that outflow channel and your under buttock straight is going to come into this canister, and once it's filled, it will turn it into the back one. So to connect your inflow, the machine needs to be on. It needs to have done its systems check, and it needs to be asking for the tubing. So I'm just going to wheel that forward for you so that you can see that the system is asking for the tubing. So I'm going to clamp both my clamps off. I'm then going to spike my bag just with one clamp. Okay. And then I'm going to open that clamp because the machine will take hold, but I'm going to keep this one clamped off. I'm then going to put the microchip into the machine. So on each microchip there is an arrow, and there's also an arrow on the housing that it goes into. So you line up the arrows in the same direction, slide it into the housing, you give it a good tug around. There is a diagram on the side, a 1, 2, 3 diagram to help you as well. And once that's done, the machine will ask you to prime the system. So to prime, you will need to ask the surgeon to open both their taps. You need to make sure that your bag has been unclamped and then press the prime key. Now the surgeon needs to hold the scope roughly at the height and the angle that they're going to go in at. If I was looking up this machine, I'd be making sure the fluid was going in and that it was coming back. The fluid will start and stop, as you can see, but the machine will let you know when the prime has been successful. When it does, it will ask for the blue stopcock to be closed. So you ask the surgeon to close the blue stopcock. They may, in turn, ask you to pause the machine instead. Now, as Alan said earlier, this fluid has been nowhere near our patient, so we don't want it in the final tally. So we press and hold until it goes to 0, and then the surgeon can go in and have a look and see what pathology is there. Once they've done that, they will then ask you for the blade that they would like. Just get that out. They will then need to turn off the blue tap, completely remove it, and keep it sterile. So whether that goes into the under buttock straight or whether that goes back on your sterile field, they will then take the cutting device and put it down the end of the scope. So, and 2 ends will be passed off to whoever's circulating. They are both green. So it's always best to put this suction tubing on first, and that goes onto your tissue trap. It needs to be nice and tight. Now, as soon as I put weight on the scale, it has paused because it thinks I'm going to change one of the canisters. That's normal, that's fine. I just need to make the surgeon aware that I'm about to do that because it will stop fluid going in as well. But all I need to do to start it is press the resume key. And then the MyoSure cutting device goes into the MyoSure controller. It has an arrow to point you in the right direction, and that will just click into place. And then it ready to do the procedure.
Okay. Fantastic, Stacey. Thanks for giving us that very quick overview of the setup, which covers all the key points. We have got maybe 4 or 5 minutes left. I wonder if you could maybe just go through some of the key fault finding hints and tips that people may come across and some
Okay.
solutions for it.
Okay, let me sit down so you can see me. So the most message that you'll see in this window here is high fluid loss. So as we explained at the beginning, it pumps the fluid in and it pulls the fluid back and gives you an accurate deficit. But if the fluid isn't coming back, you'll see a message here that says high fluid loss, and that means there's been a gap in your suction somewhere. So it is usually something to do with the canisters. So it's the first thing I would check. Make sure they're all sealed down tight. You may have changed them during the procedure. And make sure the back ones aren't filled either. It will stop sucking if your canisters are full. So once I've checked the canisters, I'd start to check the yellow tubing. Make sure the surgeon hasn't rolled over it. They're not standing on it. There's no kink in it. Make sure we haven't hung this over the patient's legs. I know as nurses, we don't like things draping on the floor, but the yellow tubing does need a little bit of gravity to help. Once I check that, I'd go to my under buttocks drape, make sure that nobody's clamped the yellow cap off, make sure that my under buttocks drape is hanging vertical. Sometimes they can have a little fold in them, and then the fluid will sit on top of the fold and can't be sucked back. Make sure that this hasn't come open, and I don't know if you can hear that, but it's now sucking air. If it sucks air, it will leave fluid in the under buttocks drape for you. And if you've checked all that, there's no fluid on the floor, there's no fluid underneath the patient, then you have to assume that high fluid loss is in your patient, and it would be up to the surgeon whether they carry on or abort. So the next or most popular troubleshooting we come across is when the bags have run dry. So you can hang 2 bags, you can spike 2 bags at the same time, but only have one unclamped at a time for best performance. But if the bag has run dry, what you'll hear around the wheel is like a flat tire noise, and your fluid deficit will be rising. So the first thing to do if you hear this is put the machine on pause. You would then take a reading of your fluid deficit, just jot that down. You would then spike your bag, and you would have to reprime the line because there'd be air in the line again. So to reprime, you would need to put it in pause mode, which it should already be in. Press and hold the prime key until the window asks you to prime again, and then you'd follow the steps of the first prime that you did. And once you'd zeroed it out, you'd be able to get on with the procedure, and then at the end of the procedure, you would take the current deficit with the one you jotted down before the reprime, and that would be your fluid deficit. Also, what you might see is it might go into pause mode if you tap the canister by accident. If that's the case, just press the pause and resume again. And again, if you need to change a canister, just let your surgeon know what you're about to do, because as soon as you touch a canister, it's going to pause. If you have a tiny little bit of pathology, then it's probably just worthwhile changing the back. But if you've got a way to go, you might as well change both of the canisters at the same time. Sometimes what we've seen is when they're tackling big pathology, you might go through a lot of bags of fluid, the under buttock drape gets pushed up, and so the fluid falls onto the floor. If that is the case, what you can do is use the 2-finger technique. If you press both of these arrows at the same time, it's a fluid deficit, fluid limit arrows, it would give you the exact amount that's been through your patient. You would then know what's been in, and you can calculate with your canisters and what's on the floor, whether you want to mop it up and weigh it, or whether you're going to estimate it. You can estimate, or you can calculate your fluid deficit. And the last one would be your MyoSure controller. Sometimes, not very often, but the surgeon can press the foot pedal and nothing will happen. If that is the case, turn the machine off. I like to take everything out, but please do not turn off your Aquilex. They are 2 separate machines. If this one is not working, this one, if you turn it off, you'll have to replace all your tubing again. So leave this one on, turn this off, take everything out, give it 30 seconds, and put it all back in again, and it should. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much, Stacey. We have had a couple of questions come in, but we're about to run out of time. But just to let anyone know who has sent in some questions already, we will respond to you individually on that, or we can even telephone you and just go through any questions you have. I'm just going to share my screen for 2 seconds. and let you know that we do have a list of common fault finding issues that could come up, and you'll see here it'll ask you what the potential problem is, and it'll give you then what the answers would be for you to check. So it gives you some fault finding hints and tips. We'll send these out to every person who is logged in with their email address, and we'd encourage you to print these off and discuss them within your team where you have a break or whatever. Just go through the different scenarios and just feel as if you understand the detail that's in there. But I would like to stress again, we do have the clinical application specialist team on hand to either phone in, they could come in as well to help you if required, so don't be frightened to get in touch and we'll do our best to help you. So first I would like to just thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your support and hope we have found this session useful. If you do have any comments or would like some support from our team, as I say, contact us on ukginsurgical@hologic.com. So that's the lettering in green, and we'll answer all those emails. And also just to remind you, if you have joined a little bit late, if you're sharing on one device, so if there's a team watching on one laptop or on a phone, etc., please email us with your names and the hospital. And what we'll do is we'll create certificates, the training certificates, to be sent directly with your name on it as well. So just send that information to ukginsurgical@hologic.com. Finally, just to let you know that if you do want to look for more resources around the Hologic GIN portfolio, and that would be NovaSure, MyoSure, Aquilex, have a look at the ginsurgicalsolutions.com, and you'll see at the bottom in blue. If you type that in, you'll find there's a wealth of information in there and all our products with videos and bits and pieces as well to help you if required. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a good day, and hopefully we'll see you back in theatre very soon. Take care.